You won't believe how ridiculous this got. My HOA nearly ruined my life over a fine that wasn't $500, not $5,000, just $5. Yep, $5. And here's the wild part. When I refused to pay, they went full wannabe crime syndicate. Everything blew up the day their so-called security team forced their way into my house, not realizing my son, a Special Forces vet, was waiting inside. Before I get into it, drop a comment with your country. I want to see how far this story spreads. It all kicked off when I got a letter in the mail. Failure to pay your $5 fine will result in legal action. I reread it 3 times in shock. The violation? A decorative breach because my wooden bird feeder didn't meet their precious community aesthetic rules. At first I laughed. Who threatened someone over less than the price of coffee? But this HOA wasn't ordinary. The president, Lorna Wells, acted like she ran her own dictatorship. She had a squad of men parading around the neighborhood in knockoff uniforms, marked HOA security. Not real officers, but they carried radios, tasers, and cheap imitation badges they flashed at residents like bullies. At first it was just threatening notes, then more fines piling up. $5 to $50 to $150. I refused to pay out of principle, and that's when things turned dark. They lingered outside my home, took pictures, leaned over my fence. My wife was terrified whenever she spotted them parked down the street. Then it crossed into outright fraud. I caught one leaving a flyer with a fake payment portal. It looked like the HOA site, but the cash funneled into someone's personal account. That's not just unethical, it's federal wire fraud. I knew this was more than a silly fine. Luckily, I wasn't alone. My son Luke had just returned from deployment. He's Special Forces, calm, calculated, and impossible to intimidate. He told me straight up, "Dad, this isn't just nosy neighbors on a power trip. This is a scam, and scams escalate. Let me take point." So while I played the clueless homeowner, Luke set up cameras, logged plates, and quietly built a case. We weren't just going to argue at HOA meetings, we were ready to expose an entire racket. Then came the breaking point. One Saturday night, I was upstairs reading when I noticed flashlights flicker across my lawn. At first I thought it was kids, but then I saw the black uniforms. 3 of their so-called enforcers were creeping across my property like it was theirs. Luke was already alert, standing still in the shadows by the stairs, calm as a loaded spring. He whispered, "Dad, stay quiet. Let's see what they're planning." Through the blinds I watched them circle my porch. One pulled out a crowbar and my stomach dropped. This wasn't posturing anymore. They were about to break in over $5. If you're hooked on this HOA madness, hit like and subscribe, because it only gets crazier. The back door groaned as the crowbar wedged the lock. Luke gave me a look, pressed a finger to his lips, and slipped silently into the hallway shadows. Then, crash! The door burst open. 3 men stormed in, acting like they had police authority. One barked, "Search the house, he can't ignore us." But they picked the wrong night. The first guy through the door never saw Luke coming. My son snatched his wrist, twisted, and the crowbar clattered to the floor. In one swift move, Luke pinned him to the wall and dropped him with an elbow to the ribs. He collapsed, gasping. The second charged with a baton. Luke sidestepped, hooked his arm, and slammed him to the floor with a judo throw that rattled the walls. The man howled, clutching his shoulder. The third froze, realizing instantly they were in way over their heads. He stammered, "This is HOA business. You can't do this." Luke stepped forward, eyes sharp as blades. "You broke into the wrong house." With perfect precision, he swept the guy's legs, pinned him face down, and planted a boot square between his shoulder blades. "You broke into the wrong house." With perfect precision, he swept the guy's legs, pinned him face down, and planted a boot square between his shoulder blades. From the stairs, my heart raced, but I couldn't look away. This wasn't a fight. It was surgical. It wasn't chaos. It was precise. Luke didn't lash out in anger. He dismantled them methodically, every move sharp and efficient. The men hit the floor one after another, wheezing for breath. Luke leaned close to the last one and said low and firm, "You broke in armed, posed as cops, and tried to kick down a door over a fake fine. That's multiple felonies. You're not walking out of here." My voice finally caught up and I dialed 911. When the operator picked up, I kept it blunt. "This is a home invasion. 3 armed suspects in phony uniforms. My son has them restrained. Send officers now." Luke never flinched, keeping them pinned until blue and red strobes danced across the blinds. That was the moment the truth about our HOA's private police cracked wide open. The street outside lit up like a TV crime scene. Patrol cars screeched to a stop and real cops stormed in, weapons raised. They cleared the hall and found Luke steady as a rock, boot planted on one intruder while the other two groaned. "Step back," one officer barked. Luke lifted his hands slowly, calm as ice. "Easy, officer." They forced entry, armed, pretending to be law enforcement. "It's handled." I hurried down the stairs, hands trembling but voice strong. These aren't cops. They're HOA muscle dressed to look official. They tried to break in over $5. The officers traded looks, then snapped cuffs on the men without hesitation, breaking and entering, assault, impersonating officers. "You're under arrest." The one in charge tried to argue through ragged breaths. "The HOA authorized us. This is official duty." A cop stared him down. "Official? That uniform is polyester with patches sewn on. It's worthless." As the rights were read, porch lights snapped on one after another. Neighbors poured outside, whispering. The HOA's fake security had been exposed. One officer glanced at Luke. "Sir, you move like you've done this before. Who are you?" Luke allowed a small smile. "U.S. Army Special Forces, retired." The words landed like thunder. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some neighbors looked ashamed. Others cheered outright. From the back of the squad car, the cuffed men shouted, "We were just following orders. Lorna Wells told us." Hearing her name made my gut clench. Lorna, the HOA president. She'd been power drunk for years, but ordering armed break-ins was madness. Police didn't wait. They called in a supervisor, and minutes later, Lorna was dragged from her cul-de-sac palace. She stormed over in a robe, screaming, "This is a mistake. They were just collecting dues." The supervisor shut her down cold. "Lady, you ordered armed men to impersonate cops, invade a home, and intimidate residents. That's criminal solicitation. You're finished." I'll never forget her face as the cuffs clicked shut. The fallout was instant. Lorna faced charges for conspiracy, trespass, and directing an unlawful entry. Her HOA police were booked for home invasion and impersonation of officers. The county prosecutor called me personally the next day, saying this case would set precedent. Through it all, Luke never once bragged. Later, he just said, "Dad, bullies are the same everywhere. Doesn't matter if it's overseas or a quiet suburb. You hold your ground." The HOA thought fake cops would scare me. Instead, they got unmasked, arrested, and dismantled by my own son. And this neighborhood will never forget it.